There, we're back again, and before we get into the video here, I wanted I don't know if you can see from here, up here I got a little like red, and then there's hot pink, those 2 glass bottles there we got from the thrift recently, and then over here right there you can only see his little eyes peeking up, another little frog. Yeah, so out of the background we got our fire going. It's just started to warm up here on the East Coast, which is, made me feel so much better, really excited. We went out today for a nice long walk. Even though it was raining, it was like in the 40s, so, it's much more comfortable and doable with the sidewalks being like fully plowed and like the snow and ice melted, so it's like safe to walk again, and just, yeah, so we were like feeling really good today. Being able to do that again, because we missed taking our outdoor walks and we were feeling quite stuffed up in here for a while. Yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited, for the upcoming spring. And right around, what was it, Imbolc that we just passed recently, that was like considered like the beginning of spring, right, in that culture. And so we're like, when we've noticed that, like the birds are starting to come out and chirp more, and I don't know, I'm excited. So, and we're going to talk about that a little bit here in the video. So let's just get into it. I wrote a lot again. This is like, it's 2,500-ish words that we wrote. Most is just like our notes on things that we want to talk about that won't be included in the description. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about here. Okay, so let's just get right into it. Because that's the other thing is, when we film these videos, the longer that they get, the longer they take to upload, the more problems we run into with it uploading. It's a little frustrating and annoying. It has been, because we really do like packing like so much information into these things and being able to make long form content. I personally like longer form content, so I want to make that. And I don't exactly know how all this works. So like in the little like YouTube studio app or whatever, I'll go to upload the video, and as it's like transferring, most times I have to like find something else to do and let that sit like while it's working away, because it can take hour to hours, if not like days of like near constant around the clock trying to upload itself. And it'll get like right up to the end, like it's been working for a very long time, and then I'll get the little message that says like something went wrong, and there's no other option other than to like try again. And so we just have to like repeat that cycle. So I don't know what all that's about. We've had run into so many technical issues more recently over the like last several months or so. I think it was in the fall when we started noticing issues with uploading that weren't there before. So I don't know exactly, but just part of the process here, so we're rolling with it. But let's get into it. Solar eclipse in Aquarius. Okay, here we go. Go scroll down. Where are we? I did like the color coding again. This time we used like 3 or 4 colors, because we just wrote so much like paragraph after paragraph. So I was like, we need more color coordination. It's getting out of hand. Okay, let's see here. Special interest, Okay. Yes. And so we're filming this a couple days early, just in case, again, like we run into those issues with uploading. We have, a few days here to buffer. Yeah. I don't know. I did another little manicure. This one's supposed to be, we just took off the pink after Valentine's Day, and this is like a black base. And then we put our hollow unicorn skin topper on top of it again. And I feel like it looks kind of like a little, like universal, like celestial, like in the stars kind of, or in the void is what we're really thinking about. Yeah, especially with, the current transits and stuff. I was like, time to return back to the void we go. Not us, but many people, yes. Okay, let's do it. Aquarius is a fixed air sign ruled by Saturn and or Uranus, occupying the 11th house, representing our karma associated with our continual expansion within our communities, social value, which includes things like our social values, circles, interactions, media, reform and transformation, friendships, sacred bonds, networking, joined forces, groups, institutions, organizations, humanitarian and political causes, and collective movements. And then our future, and involving things like manifestation, technological developments and advancements, blueprints, innovation, progressive and revolutionary ideas, possibilities, potentials, long-term goals and aspirations, desired outcomes, higher functioning, collective dreams, shared visions, and extended contributions. Like I said, it just keeps getting longer and longer. But I'm like, this is so important, right? And a lot of them are just like keywords of like different themes that are related to these topics. So, obviously we can pick and choose here, what resonates with us, but we're very thorough. And our fortune, collaborative achievements, collective resources, crowdfunding, alternative forms of support, monetary goods and assets, and global wealth distribution. Yes. Okay. The sun is in the late degrees of Aquarius before entering Pisces the day after this potent eclipse, which brings us into the last sign of the astrological year before the upcoming spring equinox next month, beginning another cycle or year anew. Pluto and Mars will remain in Aquarius while the sun joins Venus, North Node, and Mercury in Pisces, forming another powerful stellium to help us in closing out the year. This is an exciting time as we just completed a major cycle of both Neptune and Saturn, who are set to form a once-in-a-lifetime conjunction this upcoming weekend. The intense focus or concentration of this stellium and eclipse energy can assist us with looking at these particular areas, the karma or karmic lessons associated with them, and how they're at play in both our personal lives as well as the collective conscious. Okay. Light attributes for Aquarius. Open-minded, witty, clever, free-spirited, innovative, unconventional, non-traditional, progressive, visionary, mythical, intellectual, humanitarian, nonconformist, sensible, larger than life, eccentric, unusual, cool, quirky, brilliant, funky. And the shadow aspects could be aloof, impractical, over-idealistic, rebellious, unpredictable, emotionally distant, cold, detached, obstinate, stubborn, hard-headed, sarcastic, self-righteous, outlandish, unsettling, unfeeling, uncomfortable, reserved. And again, a lot of these can be like interchangeable, like certain shadow aspects could be considered light and vice versa. It just really depends on like each situation, and how we like internalize those parts of ourselves. Yeah, but that last little bit, unsettling, unfeeling, uncomfortable, I was like, because sometimes these, even if we don't recognize a certain shadow aspect within ourselves, sometimes other people can perceive that within us. And that, can be a gift, right? Because sometimes when people see or perceive us or share with us criticisms about like a certain way we are, at the very least, it can give us like something to reflect upon. Like, is this something, that exists within myself, or is this like simply a projection from someone else that they're recognizing that own shadow trait within themselves and then projecting it onto us? Because that happens too. But oftentimes, like, right, we all share in these different things. So just because we might not see a certain aspect of the shadow within ourselves doesn't mean that it's not present. It's not really there. I personally believe like we have all of them, like all light and shadow aspects, like across the board, like all these things, it just, depends on different situations and relationships and interactions where they pop up. Yeah, some more than others, but it's all there. So just a matter of how accepting we are of them and how much we work towards integrating those parts of ourselves again, so that we can see ourselves as whole again and not like a broken, fragmented being, not something like in need of fixing in any way. Yeah. Okay, and then we'll go, well, wait, so I have the reflection questions here. Yeah, this time I didn't write anything for the reflection as I did with my personal placements up top. So I think we'll go ahead and go through the reflection first. Again, it's a little different than last time. And then we'll go back up to the top and we'll talk about my personal placements and like how we've related to the Aquarius energy and like some, examples of stuff that's been going on. Yes. So for the reflection, community, future, and fortune is how we split it up. So for community, what causes, ideals, and or movements am I interested in? How do I or can I participate in more of the ways I would like? What communities am I or would I like to be part of? How do I relate to or feel connected to any particular community? In what ways am I able to contribute within my local community, an online community, and or group that I'm interested in? What value do I find in being part of a wider community or collective of people? And then for the future, what is my individual vision of the future? In what ways am I able to create, build, and or manifest this vision in my own life? What ideas, people, and or groups are part of a greater collective vision that I hold or would like to be a part of? How do I implement more of these in my current reality while creating space for it to grow within the future? Who are the forward-thinking people, revolutionary figures, and innovative visionaries who have inspired me personally or that I would like to learn more about? In what ways am I able to take that inspiration to find or create my own unique blueprint for the future? And again, like, these are so much of what we were going through, like, in our own mind and heart during our Saturn return, and even before that, but specifically during our return to prepare, like, for our own future. Like, my personal place in it, like, what I want for my life on an individual level, but also how that plays into, you know, the grander scheme of things. So, okay, and then for the last section, fortune. How am I able to support myself in the development of my own fortune as well as that on a larger scale involving the greater community and world? In what ways am I able to align myself with a more fortunate path? What are the karmas at play in my life that could be blocking my access to greater collaborative forms of support and resources? What resources are currently available to me in learning more about my personal karmas and their association with this part of my life? What alternative measures may I need to take in order to unlock or gain access to this part of myself? And the only thing I think we'll really touch on here before we go back up to the top here is like fortune, right? Like when people say like, oh, that's fortunate or that's unfortunate, or when they say like people being like blessed or lucky, all this stuff, we can look at like specific areas within our chart or astrological placements that point to these areas within all of us. And so I do believe it's true, right? Like on various levels that like we have different fortunes in life. And a lot of that is attributed to certain karmas. And so this can help explain why certain people's lives look one way and another's looks another way, right? However, right, even if, you know, we see, like, even if like our own life or we view someone else as living like less fortunate than us in some way, right? That doesn't mean that that automatically has to like dictate the future, right? And oftentimes it doesn't. Like, we have a way of working through our personal karmas unconsciously oftentimes, right? Whether we believe in things like that or not. But it can really help to more consciously, intentionally work through these things, you know, even if just out of curiosity, you know, to learn and see, you know, what we can do with it. Yeah, I mean, I look at my own life, right? And I think for my own personal chart and placements, right? Like, we have a lot of like more positive things like in our own chart, you know, which can help explain perhaps like some of the good that we've experienced in life. However, right, because of like some more like negative experiences we've lived through, we also understand on some level that like there is like various levels of like free will and power of choice and like making decisions, right? And so this used to confuse me a lot when I was younger, because I looked at like the people who went before me, specifically in my family, and like the choices they made and like how they lived their lives. And I knew from a very young age that like I wanted a much different life from my family and from the people around me. What was, you know, taught to me, or what was pressured, what was shown to me in the world, like I kind of early on rejected a lot of that internally. Just, I don't know, right? Some people consider this like a part of like a person's path or a part of their dharma. And I wouldn't have had the words for that at the time, right? But I just knew at a very young age that like I wanted to do things differently. And, you know, again, like we could have gone a different way with things because, you know, free will does exist. So like at any point in time, like I could have taken a similar road to like my mother or the people in my family. I could have made certain choices that could have made my life turn out very differently, you know, as far as like drug abuse, you know, getting pregnant young, getting married and in an unhappy marriage, you know, like so many things, like patterns that we saw not only in my own family but in people's lives around us, that I just was like, that's not for me, and we're gonna figure it out, do something different. So But again, like, I don't know, it's, let's go up to the top here. We're good on time, 15 minutes so far, yeah. So for my personal placements then, I got this one, what is this called? The Nito, is it Ice Cube? That reminds me of my guy that I work with, my most consistent client. He called, ever since I took him to a family wedding back in the fall, and the vehicle we used to get down there was like a work van. And we have one that we call a toaster because it's like silver and boxy, and it's just, you know, the name on the key or whatever. And I was telling him about that, but that's not the vehicle we were actually going to be taking. The other one was like more like white vanny, like, and he was like, oh, well, what is it called? A refrigerator, an ice cube, an ice box. And so even, you know, now, all these months later, he'll still bring that up sometimes. He's like, what's that one car we drove into? Was it the ice box, the ice cube? And so this kind of reminds me of that, my little ice cube. Yeah. Anyways, so our Aquarius here, we've got, for us personally, Aquarius sits in our 9th house, which is typically ruled by Sagittarius. And we don't have much in that part of our chart. We literally only have 2 asteroids. And one of them is Eros, you know, which I've mentioned briefly before. But it's just, there's not a whole lot of influence in that specific part of our chart. But where we have it a lot more is in the actual 11th house, which is typically associated with Aquarius. But for us, that contains our Aries. So, we don't have any major placements or like planets within this part in the 11th house, but we do have 10 asteroids. So there is still a lot of influence through that. And for places in a chart like where we don't have any planets, it doesn't mean that like we don't have that influence at all, right? Like for me personally, again, right here, for example, like an empty 11th house, like I have empty, could point to things where like, because it has to do with our community, friends, and good fortune, right? At least that's, you know, the way that it's described here. It can point to, for us, more of like navigating with more ease or practicality and within like social dynamics, and then fewer intense situations in that area of our life. And then again, like what they suggest doing if it's empty like that is to look at the house ruler. And then for me personally, like I, you know, incorporate the asteroids in it. So then, yeah, for our 10 asteroids we have in this part of our chart then, we have here, so this is getting into our notes then, we have, one of them is Ceres, I think how do you say her name? The first thing I thought of was back during my return when I had lived in my old place, the transitional housing that I was in for, you know, the couple years. And I had gone to the same thrift store that I, you know, visit frequently throughout the year. I had gotten some puzzles shortly after I moved in, so that I could like, it would something to like do with my hands, you know. And I wanted to be able to like spend some time sitting out in our little like shared kitchen with like, you know, the other girl that would end up living there. And that was something that I could do to like sit out there and like spend some time like with her at the time and socialize. Again, like when I had first moved in. And the one puzzle that I got was of Ceres. And it was her in the field holding the harvest of wheat and then the wheat all around her. And I remember it was very like yellow dominant, and it was a huge ass puzzle. I don't know if it was like 500 or 1,000 pieces. It was really fucking big though. We never did finish it. We got like all these different like strips of pieces. We like put them in bags in the box trying to get it all together. But also our little kitchen table that we had to sit at was like a small little rectangle. Like it wasn't big enough for the puzzle. So yeah, and we didn't have like smooth floors or anything, so it was like I didn't have like a smooth, even like big enough surface to like really make the puzzle, but it was fun to work on anyways. Yeah, so and as we've, you know, been transitioning through our Saturn return in Pisces, and it like hitting multiple placements for us there, and moving out of that into Saturn and Aries for us, this new energy, like these are the things that we're now looking at and focusing on at this time. I thought about maybe making a Saturn and Aries video as far as like our personal like intentions and like plan of like how we're like going about it. But I don't know if I would do that like beforehand, or if I would wait until like the end of the transit to do again like we did with Saturn and Pisces. I don't know. We'll see. Because there's plenty of people out there who have already done videos on like preparing for it. So I'm like, I don't know. But it was just thought. So yes, Ceres is considered the mother of the asteroids, and it looks at the way we nurture, mother, and care for others. And so in Aries, for us, brings more of the masculine energy to balance out a more feminine archetype, along with its independence, assertiveness, and dynamism. Right on time for our beloved Saturn-Neptune shift in Aries here. Just a little something for us to focus on. Yeah, okay, that's what I said. And then, let's see here. Where is that at? Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, what's the connection here? Valentine. The Valentine asteroid. So we were looking at this briefly too, just because, you know, we just passed the holiday. So I'm like, it's relevant. And for us personally, it sits in our first house, which is typically associated with Aries. But our first house is our Gemini. It's named after the saint. This asteroid reveals just another layer to our love and romantic life, embodying more selfless and sacrificial love, with Valentine in... Oh, okay. So this is funny. So this next part... this is from Astro Ash, is her name. We got from her blog, but I think she's like across different platforms. An astrologer and intuitive, she goes by. Yeah, so according to like her, having the asteroid Valentine in the first house represents a shadow follower, she calls it, in quotes, or someone who is always watching. I put laughing my ass off. Even mimicking our style and interests, and we may attract narcissists. I said, you don't say. And then its correlation to Gemini for us personally in our first house placement represents an individual who obsessively analyzes for hidden meanings, likely to deep dive into our social media, demonstrating an unsettling level of interest in our thoughts and communications. She says, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of weirdos in your DMs. Yeah. I mean, I think that happens to women in general. Yeah, but I was like, that's pretty spot on, I'd say. Yeah. And then I wrote here, and people wonder why we, not even just me, but like women in general, are so guarded, and we're frequently uncomfortable. And, you know, for me personally, like I'm extremely private because of things like this. I said, the proof is in the pudding, baby. This is just a small part of why we love astrology as a self-defense mechanism, along with many other esoteric mediums to keep us safe and informed at all times. Yeah. Okay, and then I wrote here, some of this that I wrote about, I was like, I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about it or not. We still haven't really wanted to do too much personal updating right now. But, let's see here. We'll see as we go. I was actually talking about this with my housemate earlier today, before I went out for a little bit to go on my little walk in the rain and run some errands. Yeah, last weekend, I believe it was, I became suddenly unwell where I threw up like 7 times in a row. And I remember the first thing I thought when I was like sitting there on the floor hovering over the toilet, I was like, oh my God, this is happening again. Because it literally happened about a year ago or around this time. And both times that it happened, the first thing, first place my mind goes is it something I ate, right? But we really don't believe so. And I was talking again with my housemate about this earlier, trying to, make sense of it, and also like how we feel about it personally. Just how like our bodies like hold on to certain like emotions, and how certain memories or periods of time, can trigger things within us. So yeah, I wrote about, connection to past trauma, specifically around the holiday like Valentine's and betrayal. And so we were really feeling that in our stomach, like our solar plexus, and emotions of literal disgust. Feeling emotionally triggered as we see just like pattern recognition, of like things that remind us of past trauma. And we're like, oh, this looks or feels familiar. Like I've felt this before. I've seen this before. And it triggered that reaction in us, where immediately I was just like disgusted, and I actually went and got sick. My body's like literally purging itself. It's like, we don't like this. So that's, yeah. And I wrote how, I reflect on what is fear-based and not true, and why it's important to trust ourselves, our bodies, and our intuition when something doesn't feel right to us. We know deep down, we know so much of what is true, at least for us personally already. If something feels off, it is. Period. There's no like explanation or needing to like fight it or like, gaslight ourselves. Like if something feels off, it is. And we've experienced that time and time again. So just another one of those. And we have every right and reason to feel that way still, because of the consistent strangeness we deal with on an ongoing basis from people around us. We're simply trying to stay safe in a world that has yet to create sustainable safety. So that's a little note on that. And then we go into a little bit more of boundaries, a couple paragraphs down. So we'll touch on that a little bit more. But I'm just going to keep going like as we have our points here. We're already almost 30 minutes in. So I'm like, we're doing good. Let's get through this. So as we were reading into the asteroids, we were also looking into ephemeris, I think how you say it, which translates to diary or journal in the Latin or Greek. And it's used in astronomy and celestial navigation. I thought this was a little funny, since we call our channel our magical digital diary, because it truly is in more ways than one. I think like for anyone like passing by or just like would see it like by a glance and see what we're doing, it wouldn't immediately like trigger like deeper understanding, or like I wouldn't expect people to think much of what we're doing. And part of that is because we are so like lighthearted and like colorful, and just like there's all kinds of stuff that we're doing. It's not necessarily like part of like when we were deciding for ourselves how we wanted to show up, right? And I have been watching different creators online for years, and I've seen different like business models that they follow, and like a lot of it's the same or very similar in a lot of ways. And I knew I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to follow the same way that other people do things. I wanted to create my own path, pave my own way. And so I thought about that. I was like, I could like show up and like post after post, it being like my face and like doing the same thing, or like showing up in the same way. And a lot of people like that consistency, and it can be good for like certain kinds of like growth as far as business goes. But because that's not our primary focus, we want to be able to show up and relate to people in a much more human way, natural way, like how we actually are. yeah, because I feel like a lot of times that stuff, I mean, it is forced. Like, nobody really lives the way that they often show themselves online. And so we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to fall into that trap, because I do feel like it is a trap. Yeah, and it makes it hard for people when they decide that they might want to like shift or do things differently or show different sides of themselves, especially like in the changing of the climate around us, the social climate, and how, you know, people have for a long time been craving something deeper. They've been wanting to see more reality and like authenticity and genuine emotion and feeling and experience, and moving away from I don't even know how to describe, you know, how the internet and like social dynamics have been online in the past, but just, you know, it's been strange. So yeah, our diary. We are actively creating and exemplifying a visual, digital, video diary of not only our personal relation to the celestial atmosphere, but also collectively. And again, this isn't something we intended to be immediately recognizable or popular by any means, but it feels very true and authentic to who we are, our vision, and the path we are on. And I am of the belief that our actions speak far louder for us than anything we could ever say aloud. And so it has been our intention to do just that. And in doing so, allowing those who would be drawn to us naturally, wink, wink, without having to force or fight for attention, views, likes, etc. Because that's the other thing. I feel, again, I've like watched people online for a long time, right? Like before we decided to like start creating more things. And I feel like you can tell when you watch someone most of the time, you know, like why they're doing it. And a lot of times people, you know, will create things online, you know, because how would I say that? It's just that, like, again, the way people present themselves online, it is often masked. Like it's not a full, true expression of who they are or like why they're doing it. And that doesn't mean that people are necessarily like not meaning well. You know, I think a lot of people do truly want to be of some sort of like help or like make their mark or like do all kinds of different things in the world, right? But I mean, we have so much entertainment and we have so much of the same things out there. And that in bulk like that, of just like the same thing over and over again, or people doing things in the same ways, showing up in the same way, it doesn't make as great of an impact as we could if we would follow like our own star, follow our own path. But that is the harder thing to do. So there's a reason why people don't do that. But that's not us. So this would act as a kind of ephemeris or wayfinder. I love that word, right? Like that's kind of how we view some of this, what we're doing. Although not in the same physical way that we're used to. It's not intended to, as we're trying something new. If we as humans could potentially connect to each other on deepening levels energetically, consciously, psychically, and astronomically, but it has yet to be proven because it has been so rejected or thrown out by the scientific community, then perhaps we were in need of a bit more in-your-face kind of evidence. To be collected through time, though, I'm sure. Humans are fearful creatures, and it can take some time to even simply warm up to the idea of the levels of depth or intimacy we are truly capable of. The kind of community I envision building begins with every little thing we are doing now, as we speak, and the integrity that lies behind and within every action. Snappity snaps to that. That's like the end of that paragraph for us then, right? Okay. Sharing a bit of like our vision, the way we see things, what we're, you know, what we're doing, why we're doing it. Okay, yes. And then, so we have another like personal example of how we've related to the Aquarius energy. And this was something at work recently. Two Aquariuses in my life. The one I knew was an Aquarius. I actually made her a card for her birthday the other week. Yeah, very similar to like the other stuff we do online. Like I drew a little like water bearer, like the pot with the water spilling out and a star on it for the major arcana, the star. Yeah, and then little bubbles around it. And then I put like similarly like all the light attributes around the happy birthday in her name. Yeah, so I knew she was an Aquarius, but I didn't know the other person was an Aquarius. So, and they, you know, they were going through some conflict between the two of them, but it was more one-sided as far as I understood it. And, you know, I was kind of in the middle of it. So this was back like around Christmas Eve that happened. So yeah, 2 Aquariuses in my life that weren't getting along in the holidays. And then we got to witness an improvement or better interaction when they surprisingly showed up around the same time the one day. And we ended up spending a couple to a few hours together talking. 2 to 3 hours. Catching up and hanging out between the 4 of us, but it was mainly the 2. And they even ended with a sweet little hug. I was like, yes, love to see it. I did not say anything or intervene in their natural interaction, but we were serving as a kind of mediator since the one had been avoiding the other for some time. Like, I don't know if I, you know, hadn't already been there and like talking with the one and the other one had come in, if she would have like stayed or stuck around, or if she would have left, you know, or if it would have gone differently. I really don't know. But I think because I have like separate relationship with the both of them, but I know both of them, right? And have already like been in communication between the 2 of them before, and it hasn't even come up in a while, right? I think that helps to like form or like be in a kind of like safety or like anchor in that environment where it's like, okay, like everything's chill, everything's fine. Like we can just be here. Yeah. So. And the last time that I had seen the one, I had tried to communicate with her, even though she was upset, you know, that she is really like loved, because she was like struggling with some stuff like internally, like negative thoughts like towards herself and other people, and like a lot of shame in that. So, you know, we tried to like speak to her in that place and like to her heart at the time. And, you know, I hadn't seen her since then. Yeah, that was Christmas Eve. And then this just happened last week. So it was like, what, like a month and a half-ish. So yeah, it was really nice to see that. I didn't, felt good, warmed my heart. Even if internal struggles or conflict doesn't get resolved, we can still choose the higher cup, so to speak, and choose to engage with those around us from a place of openness, kindness, love, and support, even when we are uncertain, distrusting, or struggling with our own self-esteem or worth. We can still love even when it is challenging, and that makes all the difference in the world, even if just to one person. Okay, yeah, that's that. And then the last little section here, these last 2 paragraphs that we have, we're doing good on time. I'm like, can we make it in under an hour? I'm going to try. The last 2 sections here, we wrote on boundaries, some of our thoughts. And this goes back to some of the stuff that's been coming up as we've like, you know, just like working through like different aspects of our own healing as it relates to like our solar plexus. And again, like past betrayal and like being reminded of that around this time of year, and like being like re-triggered in some ways, you know, and like so some of this is, you know, what we've been thinking about. Boundaries, yeah, as open as we are in sharing specific things about ourselves and even into our personal placements. This is all through many years of practice and developing deep trust within myself and with God and the universe. And so knowing on some level when to speak and what to share, as well as what not to. There are certain things that I believe should only be shared with certain circles and based upon various levels of intimacy that are present. So while we are most open with those closest to us, like our close friends and family, even then, there's much we withhold, and on purpose. There are certain things I would only share with like a partner, for example, on that deeper level to me than like even those other people would be, right? And then even, you know, from that place, there are certain things only meant for me. And for me to know alone and between God and I alone, like even with a partner who would be like that next closest relationship next to like myself, there are certain things I wouldn't even share with them, you know? And I think that it's important to know what those things are for ourselves. This is one of the ways we actionably protect ourselves and others whilst remaining open to new connections and broader networks. As Aquarius can be so open and free-flowing, even more so as we move into Pisces here shortly, we have to be careful in our interactions in our growing communities if we want to protect what we have built already or are in the process of building together. Like a child or a small seedling until it reaches maturation. Which reminds me, right? Like, the whole like leading up to Saturn and Aries, like closing out Saturn and Pisces, I was like, ooh, it's graduation week, it's graduation day, like, and we did like a little ritual like right around the time, like 10 minutes to like up until I think it was like 7:11 p.m. here that it was happening, the switch over, and I was like, we set up a whole thing here, and it was so funny because I was like in the dark, had like the fire and like the candle going, you know, like very like fire focused, and I just was, you know, I'm in here like kind of like dancing, moving my body around, and I'm like, if someone were to like see this, because earlier that day my housemates had some little ones running around upstairs, and every now and then they'll like peek in or like pop in and like giggle, laugh or whatever, and they had done that earlier in the day, but at that time of like evening, night, I didn't think they were going to do that. But I was like, if they were to do that, or like her, anyone else were to like peek in at what we're doing, we would probably look crazy. Maybe they might even be a little frightened. But I was so excited, and yeah, we graduated, we did it, we survived, and beyond just surviving, like we really did a lot. And I swear to goodness, that night and that next day and even today, and just we've been feeling so good since then, and just like everything is like really lightening up for us. Like Saturn's energy can be really dense, and because of our multiple Pisces placements, and then with that Neptunian influence on Pisces too before it went over, it was just a lot. It was a lot. Like the way that we felt and processed the energy was a lot. And then Saturn's like association with like our bones, bone daddy. Yeah, and so like all this like kind of like bodily pain and intense tension that we were feeling for a long time, and so just already like, and again, that's part of the reason we wanted to get out today for our little walk. I'm just like, I gotta like any sort of like last remaining things like feeling attached to us, like I'm just like it's gone, bitch. Like I'm free. I'm free. Yeah, and for those with Saturn and Aries, prepare to feel the restriction, feel the wrath of Saturn. It's all good though. It's loving. It's a loving kind of restriction, boundaries to protect and to teach. But yeah, the way we felt it was intense. But now we have the Aries energy, and I'm just like, it's woo. Okay, we're having so much fun. We listened to a little Celine Dion earlier when I was driving around in the car. Yeah, we were just really feeling it. Feeling ourselves. I love it. I love the new energy. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so a child or small seedling in its maturation, it needs not only time, nurturing, and consistency, but also the protective boundaries, as in like a crib for a baby, right? Or a fenced-in area, keeping them safe from like falling or getting injured, or like wild animals taking to our crops when we're not looking. As we develop our inner sense of safety, protection, and boundaries, only from that place can we truly offer that to another. And until then, oftentimes we are not truly safe to hold or carry the life or harvest to be bestowed upon us. Yeah. And then I wrote here the importance of privacy, containment, and caution with who we share certain information with, including any part of ourselves and our energy. As energy provides or transmits information. As we mentioned briefly in our devil video about energetic cords between people, the more sensitivity and awareness we hold to these things, and so to each other, the more information we are able to gather from a variety of sources, which can sometimes include very personal information that we may not truly want just anyone to know or have access to. So it is very important to maintain strong boundaries and vet people before giving them various levels of access to ourselves. Most people are unconscious yet to these things, but that doesn't make them harmless. And of those that are conscious to it or hold a certain level of awareness, there are those that handle energy very differently. Some who consciously seek to create safety, comfort, peace, and mutual growth or symbiosis with that energy or information. And again, these are the things that you can like feel. If we go beyond our ego mind, especially like an unintegrated, right, or an unconscious aspect of our ego where we're like triggered by like our fears and like our shadow, if we can get beyond that and we can kind of like discern and differentiate between what is fear within us and what is like truly felt through like energetic resonance, then we can feel truly like what not only we feel ourselves, but also like people around us potentially, you know. Yeah, and then other forms of communication through that. Yeah, but again, there are others who do not, who will actively seek to disturb, distort, and drain if they are allowed. Once again, our spiritual sovereignty is needed to truly protect ourselves, our peace, and those we love, so as not to fall prey to those who cannot hold us. To be a truly safe person is to understand these principles and to live them tenaciously, lest we be the ones to cause harm to those we are meant to protect. Yeah. Another book that we read on this many years ago was, I think it's by Dr. Henry Cloud. Is it by him? It's literally called Boundaries. And then he has several of them where he goes into like specific like boundaries between different kinds of like relationships. I think there's one for like teens, and then for like romantic relationships, and maybe like, I don't know, they just goes into like all kinds of stuff. Yeah. But that's another one that we, read many years ago that has kind of like formed some of our like thinking around this stuff. Yeah. So yeah, and I feel like even though we're not responsible for anyone in our lives, we are, unless we have like dependents on us, right? Or like it's a part of our job and things like that, right? Like when I'm working as like a caregiver, then I am responsible for like the person I'm caring for at that time, right? But on a larger scale than that, I feel like we are responsible to each other. And this is something we talked about in my old church, right? Where we don't need to believe or like hold in our heart that the decisions people around us make have anything to really do with us. But at the same time, understanding that the decisions that both we and others make do affect us, do affect the world around us. Not even just like in an actionable way, like you take this action and it causes this action to occur, or this cause and effect, as in like the laws of the universe. But on a spiritual level and an energetic level, between like heart and mind and like in our bodies and things like that, right? There are deeper levels of effects that these things have. And again, like the more sensitive we are to some of these things, and we hold a certain level of like awareness, understanding about it, the easier it is to understand why certain things happen, and even to practice like forgiveness, right? For a lot of like unconscious acts and like decisions in the world that like hurt or harm or like fail to protect. But just because we are aware and we understand and we can feel things very deeply doesn't mean that we need to allow various kinds of like access, or especially like repetitively, right? And it can be hard, especially like, again, going back to like a lot of my Pisces placements, and this is something we had to face during our return and working in healthcare and all that, and just like personal life in general, right? Like there are people all around us at all times who do not hold an awareness of these things, or they don't believe it, or they don't care to think about it. Yeah, but it can come across a little reckless in some ways, right? Like even if we don't believe in like the spiritual side of things, or believe, that energy works in certain ways, that doesn't mean that it doesn't. It doesn't mean that it does either, right? We can't necessarily like prove certain things just yet. But again, as I talked about earlier, this is part of the reason why we're here. Yeah. Not as like a sacrifice, not as a sacrificial lamb, right? Which is a part of like Pisces, learning that, and this actually goes into Saturn and Aries too, right? Is moving away from the martyr complex. And I think Adam Ellenboss is his name. He's another astrologer that I really like and I'll listen to regularly. He's done a lot of videos on Saturn as well, and specifically preparation for Saturn and Aries here. And I think he did one on that, the martyr. Yeah. And it ties into both Saturn and Pisces as well as Saturn and Aries. It's like a similar lesson to learn, but in just some of the different ways. Yeah. So again, this video is getting really long. We wanted to, not make it too long here, so it can hopefully upload in time. I think that's good. We're gonna stop there. Yeah. And that's it for now. We don't have any other long form videos planned at this time. Yeah, other than like our moon videos that we'll have here. Yeah, but this is it for now. Yeah, feeling good, feeling excited, and I don't know. That's that. All right. See you next time.